Okay, we're live. My name is Cody C. Engdahl, and this is my channel, and I don't have a fancy start yet. We're going to work on that. Actually, you know what? I've already screwed up because I do have, I wouldn't call it fancy, but it's better than just nothing. I do have a professional mic, so let's do that. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to try not to bury the lead here. We're going to have Loyd Elmore Jr., and I got to say, I've known Loyd now years, and we're good friends. There we go. Can everybody, Loyd, if you can hear me, I can see you in the waiting room. Nod your head. All right, good. I just plugged in my good microphone, which is this one right here, which I'd forgotten to do. So this channel, this channel's been around since like 2007. Done a lot of different things with it, but what we're going to focus on now is books. Everything I do is really about marketing myself. Sorry about that. But we're going to talk about the journey. I do not present myself, I don't claim to be an expert. I just claim to be someone who's on the journey. I am writing books. I have 4 novels out right now. I'm writing my 5th one. And I want to share that journey with you if you're a reader or a writer. I also want to share the journeys of my fellow writers. All of us are on a journey. Some of us are further along. Some are just starting. Some of you out there might be dreaming about publishing a book, and I highly, I encourage you to do it, because I think really the truth is you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to be brilliant. You just have to be willing to do the work. You just have to be willing to do the work, do the criticism, take the criticism. So anyway, I'm already bearing the lead because I talk too much. So we're going to have a guest on here. I have to say that Loyd is a personal friend of mine. I've known Loyd now for several years. It started by him coming out to one of my fiddle gigs with one of my books and asking me for an autograph. That turned into finding out that Loyd's an author too. Loyd's published several books out. He's got, I won't be able to name them all, but I know that Loyd's got, he's got, I think, 2 short story collections, or at least 1 out. He's nodding. He's got 2. He's got 3 books that are memoirs, but he had his first novel, Malinville. And I'll tell you, aspiring writers, writing in series is very helpful, especially if your book 1's pretty good. So he has just put out book 2, which is Malinville 2 Remnants. So without any further ado, I'm going to bring on Mr. Loyd Elmore Jr. And there he is. Loyd, say hello to everybody.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I need to turn up my volume here. All right. All right. I might have to plug in my.
Just with my micro. I guess it's okay.
Yeah, I might have to plug in my headset to hear you better. I don't know what the mix is out there, but anyway, let's do this. Let me see if I can give you the floor.
Oh,
I'm gonna go. No, that's just giving me the floor. That's both of us. Look at this. So, like I said, folks, we are. This is a learning process, and yeah, I want to exclude me and just have you, but we'll
we don't have to do that.
Yeah, well, there's plenty of me out there. So I'm gonna get my headset, and what I would like you to do is I don't want to bury the lead. So I thought about how are we gonna do this interview. So I didn't want to start off with, tell me why you got into writing. Tell me about the first, and then 45 minutes later, after we bored everybody to death, it's like, okay, what's the new book? So while I go get my headset,
Okay.
I want you to tell to my blank wall here.
Okay.
I want you to pitch the book. Okay, so you got a brand new book out. It's called Remnants 2. Tell me about it. I'll be right back.
All right. Well, it's the sequel to Malinville. Malinville is about a group of people who live in the woods, find this man's house. There's a whole situation on how they got there, but you're going to have to read the book to find out. It's a cross between Gulliver's Travels and always think of the cartoon when I was a kid in the 80s called The Littles. You ever heard of The Littles?
They like the Smurfs.
No, it was like this really kind of crappy cartoon based on the borrowers, but they couldn't say the borrowers. They had to say the littles. You know, the borrowers, about these little people that live in this house, and it's
I didn't do the same drugs that you did.
well, the thing, I didn't do any drugs, so
I had, because I was
unless it was
all
junk
for you.
food. That was about the only drug I did.
Yeah. Well, but I liken it to kind of like, I mean, not Blue, but Smurfs being like tiny people living in a tiny world.
Yeah, they're just not blue.
Right. Because as you know, are we the same age, or are you? I was surprised.
I'm heading toward 52 in December.
Okay, yeah. So you're just a little. Well, I don't like to say my age, but yeah, we're about the same age.
Yeah.
But the thing about the Smurfs was just like anything. When the Smurfs hit America, it was an explosion, and then everybody had to come out with like their own version of the Smurfs. So I'm wondering if that's
No, the borrowers were way before the guy who created the Smurfs LSD trip.
okay.
When he created them, apparently, quote unquote, he was on a LSD trip when he was seeing Smurfs, so he created the cartoon.
Okay, the Belgian guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think the original Smurfs are Belgian, and they but I thought they were like a Belgian like print cartoon in the French language in the 60s.
That's only the thing that I heard, and it's probably not true. But then again,
Well,
it could be true.
Well, I think there's some. I think it is true what your story is. I think also that it was influenced by folklore from Belgium. Yeah, that they were. But anyway, we digress. So, the book is about basically tiny people.
Yeah, they average about 6 inches.
Okay.
They weren't naturally. Well, they were born that way, but they weren't created naturally. They were created in a lab. And originally, they were made to be assassins, little people who could sneak into places and kill targets. But they developed their own personalities, which the people that created them didn't want them to do. As human life usually does, they develop their own will, and that's kind of where the beginning of the first one starts. I just happen to have something right here.
Okay,
there we go.
You're freezing. Oh, there it is. There's the book. Okay, so Loyd, this is book 2.
Book 2.
And just so you know, you're freezing quite a bit on my end.
I know. I've noticed that. I don't know why.
Oh, is it happening on your end too? Okay. It might be your connection.
Could be.
So I have a series myself, and I think the biggest danger of writing a series is like people might not buy book 2 because like they might not just start with book 2 because they're like, well, I don't have to go back and read book 1. So without spoiling book 1 too much, and you've done this, you didn't spoil it, but you've told us a little bit. Tell us about what we need to know from book 1 to get us into book 2.
Honestly, you really don't need to read the first book because there's enough of a introduction in the second one that lets you know who they are and what they're doing. I mean, I'd prefer for you to read the first one.
Right, of course.
But you don't need to. If you happen to see that, pick it up, grab it, read it.
Yeah, I this is a philosophy that I use myself as well. And my books are very interconnected. Like if in a person I would liken myself to, but most people would know and so easily recognize, especially in my genre, is Bernard Cornwell. And Bernard Cornwell, I think his most popular series, at least when it comes to books, are the Richard Sharp books, which take place in the Napoleonic Wars. But then there's also the Uhtred books, which have been made popular by the streaming show, The Last King. Have you seen The Last Kingdom?
I know of it, but I haven't watched it.
It might not be something, because I don't think that's really your genre. But before The Lost Kingdom came out, he was mostly famous for the Richard Sharp movies or the Sharp books, which they made movies out of with Sean Bean. But the trick that Cornwell does is that I remember reading about series, and there's two kinds. There's serial series, which is kind of redundant. There's serial and there's episodic.
Right.
And the difference is kind of like the difference between The Fall Guy and Dynasty, if you watched TV in the 80s like I did. The Fall Guy is episodic, meaning every episode of The Fall Guy
is its own thing. Yeah.
It's its own thing. Now you might, and maybe like in the beginning, they kind of explain, hey, this guy's he's a stuntman. He's a Hollywood stuntman. He's also a bounty hunter. And here's this hot chick in a bikini. And here's this kind of dumb nephews helping him out. And then here we go. We're on to our next adventure. Bernard Cornwell writes that way. So like Richard Sharp is this like tough guy, came from the streets and ends up becoming an officer in the British Army during the Napoleonic Wars. And so every book just kind of finds him somewhere and then starts a new thing. And you just kind of know that. And there are some themes that run through the books, but you don't have, if you want to read, I think there's 22, if you want to read book 18, and you don't have to go back to book 1 and read that.
Right.
That's episodic. Serialized is like Dynasty, which was like primetime soap opera. It was
right.
And it was like previously on Dynasty, and then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe she did
right.
that. So and I would say that my books are serial. They're definitely serial. It's a continuation, but each book tells its own story, and I put as much. When I write, I assume you've read nothing that I've written before, without trying to bore the reader who has read everything. Give the new reader just enough context so they understand what's going on, and then maybe they'll go back and read it. So where do you fall along the line with that, with serialized and episodic?
Well, I mean, it depends. It depends. Like, I mean, with Malinville,
mm-hmm.
You get a little bit of what happened, so you're somewhat caught up. But it always helps to read the book before.
Of course, yeah.
Because there's going to be some things that's talked about that is, of course, related to the first one.
Yeah.
And it'll be the same way with the third one when it comes out, and it links to the second one and the first one. When it came to the Fall Guy and Dynasty, I watched the Fall Guy. I didn't watch Dynasty.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really care for soap operas. Not to say that I didn't watch soap operas. But yeah, Fall Guy, Heather Thomas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'll tell you, it was I think it was the last time that I truly actively was watching TV, that I was like, and I think it was it Wednesday night, but it was basically, it was a Greatest American Hero, which was my favorite of the three. Greatest American Hero, Fall Guy, and then Dynasty. And, in television, I worked in television for over 20 years, I think. And started on the advertising side, actually. But but we talk about lead-ins. And so it's very important. So like when you stack your shows on prime time, you're looking at lead-ins. So you're hoping that the audience you have with Fall Guy is going to lead into, and that's basically what happened. I think I started with the Greatest American Hero because I love that show.
Right.
And then I watched The Fall Guy because it came on right after, and I was just too fat and lazy with my melting, bowl of ice cream on my lap to get up and change the channel. This is, free remote control, right?
Right.
In fact, I think we had one of those console TVs where it was a wooden cabinet that we had when I was born. Yeah, wooden cabinet with had the TV in the center, and it had a turntable and a radio, and they had
Oh
a
my
booth
gosh. Yeah,
bar.
we had one of those.
Yeah, and you see them on, they're always trying to make us feel bad on social media because they're like, I'm this old. I'm like,
Right.
oh my.
Ours had an 8-track player too. So
We had one, but it wasn't part of that. We had a separate stereo system that had the 8-track. Yeah. And actually I want to find, I don't want to go too far because I that's one of my like things I'm trying to fix. But just a real aside, we not only did we have that, but we had the only thing we ever played on the 8-track that I can remember is we had a Christmas song cassette, I guess. And it was and every Christmas it was the only time we ever used the 8-track. And I would like to know what that was, because the versions of those Christmas tunes were like the theme song of my childhood Christmases.
Oh, okay.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Because nostalgia is very important, and I think it is for you too.
Oh yeah.
And I think the one, you and I are very different authors. First of all, genres. I think we're very. I'll tell you right now. I'll tell you where I think you and I are very much alike.
Okay.
We write a lot to the emotional context of our stories.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, because I write, if people listening don't know, I write more like historical novels that are full of it. I call them swashbucklers, and my idea is to like the swashbucklers, the black and white swashbucklers I watched as a kid on broadcast television, like with Errol Flynn and all that, to have that kind of sense, but then put it into real historical novels, and to really give like context to the way my characters are feeling, their insecurities or fears. And when I read your work, and I've read your first book of short stories, and I've read at least one other short story from you outside of that, is I get that same sense that you're a very empathetic writer. And so when I'm reading your stuff, I'm not just reading the story like, and then this happened, and then he said this, but I'm also getting a sense of what this person is going through and what they're feeling. And it's powerful. It's great. I gotta tell you, I'm a real fan of your work.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I consider you, well, we are friends. I don't have to say that. And so I'm going to be helpful, but I really do believe in your writing. And I think that you got everything you need to make it. It's just a lot of work, as I know. It's just a constant thing. I think it takes about 10 years.
Yeah.
And with putting consistent good work out there and good marketing. But I remember the spaces between the spaces. Am I getting that right?
The spaces between spaces.
Okay, I'm adding an extra the.
Yeah.
The spaces between spaces. That's
there
where
you
I'm
go.
going. Okay. And please forgive me. I have that kind of mind. That's why I constantly call you Elmore Loyd.
I wish my name was Elmore Loyd, because it'd be more Elmore James.
Yeah, is it Elmore James?
Elmore Leonard.
So which
Elmore James is the blues player.
Okay. All right.
Elmore Leonard is was the most wonderful writer ever.
Yeah, we used to be neighbors because he lived in West Bloomfield, Michigan, which is a suburb of Detroit, and I'm from Detroit. Yeah. And of course you watch the movie Out of Sight, all those scenes, all the Detroit scenes is all shot on location, and I know exactly everywhere even when they're in a back alley, I know where that alley is. I mean, it's we Detroiters don't get a lot of that, because Detroit's not a very sexy city. It's only tough. Detroit's only like, I want a urban decay, tough city, Detroit. But we got that a little bit in RoboCop, but it wasn't really Detroit.
Yeah.
We did get it in 8 Mile and Gran Torino.
Yeah, you got it in Kentucky Fried Movie too. Do you remember Kentucky
Right.
Fried Movie?
Yes. And I gotta tell you, so Detroiters have a natural anti-pride. Like we
Yeah.
take like we love making fun of our own city.
Yeah.
There was a motto. Oh my god. So there was a marketing campaign to try to elevate Detroit's the people's feeling about Detroit, because Detroit had a very negative connotation stemming from the race riots of 1967 and on. And so when I was a young man, there was a campaign called "Say Nice Things About Detroit,"
Oh,
and there were bumper stickers and things like that saying that. But Detroiters being Detroiters, it got bastardized and satirized. And there was T-shirts that were very popular. It was a T-shirt of a guy holding a gun to a pit bull's head, and it says "Say nice things about Detroit."
oh,
or I'm gonna shoot the dog. But
oh my God.
it's pretty funny. So so what you're saying is, and I think this is good work, is that the way you should do it is that you can go pick up. And by the way, people, short commercial break here. The link to mail into Remnants is down there in the description here. So if you don't have to buy it, but you can go there and you can click on it, you can look at it, and I think there's a free preview too, right?
I don't know, because it takes a few days for that to come up for the special, like the first 10 pages or something.
Okay.
I don't think it's available yet for the preview.
Well,
or maybe it is. I don't know.
Not on my side. Okay, but here we go. So
Hey.
if you're watching this a little later on, that preview. Oh, wait, here we go. Read the sample.
I guess so.
I'm always afraid to read my own samples.
It wasn't up there yesterday. So
there are no small adventures. I like this idea. I really do like. To tell you the truth, I've kind of waited to see what they're about, because I do want to read Malinville at some point. But yeah, you can look through it and for free. Excuse me. Not only can you read it the preview for free online, but if you have a Kindle, if you're a Kindle reader like me, you can download a free preview. I do this a lot, where you download the free preview, and then see, look, there's one of them right there. Yeah, wow, she's smoking.
Yeah.
My
friend Jerry Lou created her. She's a little different in my head, but when I saw the picture, I was like, nah, that's going in, because that's awesome.
Yeah. And see, I gotta tell you something. Like, I'm just a typical, pig-headed man. You show me like a sexy lady on it, I'm like, I want to read it, because I want to read about this chick.
Well, the thing about Mary, she's tough. She's not a damsel in distress kind of woman. She might be 6 inches tall, but in some way she'll kick your ass.
Yeah, I just looking at her, I can see that she could probably kick my ass, and I would probably enjoy it. So okay, that's cool. That's great. So she's got I can't see, but it looks like she's got a bow and arrow.
She does have a bow. I tried to keep the weapons realistic for someone who would be 6 inches tall.
Yeah.
So of course they don't have guns.
Right. Because
they can't have guns.
Yeah, it would be ridiculous. And also, I'm even as a kid, so I was always fascinated with like swords and things like that.
Yeah.
And even as a kid, I was kind of not anti-gun politically. I love guns. But I was so into swords that I felt like guns were cheating. And so
right,
I wanted to live in a time where men carried swords. And also in warfare too, like the one thing that guns did, the advent of guns, guns were a great equalizer, because even like archery, like the British longbow men, you couldn't just take like a full grown man, and give him a bow, he wouldn't be able to pull it. You would have to start boys at 8 years old. And in medieval England, archery training was compulsory. Every male citizen, or I'm sorry, not citizen, but subject in England had to go to like monthly or weekly archery training, because that's how the British or the English dominated in the late medieval time, like, you know, in the 100 Years' War and all that, because of their archers. And you would start boys at 8, and they're pulling bows, and as they get older, the bows get, you know, bigger and bigger and bigger, because the war bow that they had, like you and I couldn't pull that.
Yeah.
I mean, these men had huge chests, huge arms, because they spent a lifetime doing that. And a lot of the other, that's why a lot of people like crossbows, because crossbows, you had a crank, and you could crank
Right.
it back and almost. But with the advent of musketry, anybody can be taught to load a musket and shoot it. And so now you don't, you know, the wimpy guys can't get, you know, can't get excused from the war, because we'll just make you a musketeer and you can
Yeah.
shoot.
But they had to be quick.
They had to be quick. Yeah. I think during the time of the American Revolution, your average, at that time, the British Army was probably the best trained army in the world. And your average British soldier could get off like 4 or 5 rounds a minute. So that's like fire, bam, take it down, rip it open, your cartridge, pour the ball and the gunpowder in the ball, slam it down, prime the frozen pan, pull it back, cock it, and fire. And they could do that 4 times. Your average American could do it maybe twice. Although a lot of them did have militia training, because a lot of them fought with the British before, and so had British military training. And before anybody, you know, once again, to go on a tangent, there's a myth about the American Civil War in which the Americans won because we were all hiding behind trees and you know, while the British were stupidly standing in line. That's not true. Right. Our regulars were doing the same thing, because that made the most sense for that 18th century warfare. It's mostly because Britain had an entire ocean from the front, where we were just there, you know,
right.
and we mostly just kind of outlasted them until it got too expensive for them. And the real war was won in Parliament after Yorktown, because Yorktown didn't end. It didn't end for another year. But after Yorktown, there were British politicians said, look, we're just fighting for pride right now. We can actually benefit from being trading partners with this new nation that we don't have to spend any more money administering than sending our guys over there. Half of them are going to die on the trip there of dysentery on the 3-month trip across the Atlantic. It's just not worth it. And of course, you know, France is getting involved and they're making it expensive. So let's just stop doing it and be friends with them.
Right.
And, you know, that's, of course, we had the little brush up with the War of 1812, but that's mostly because we, being Americans, we love to make a buck, and we're like, hey, we can make a lot of money by supplying the French, who are the enemies of England. Pardon, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, so yeah, nobody in Malinville has a gun.
No one has a gun, yeah. And we went, I took that and ran with it, didn't I?
It's okay.
No one has a gun. So it looks like, you know, you get the prologue. You can read chapter, let's see, in part of chapter 1. You know, so I always say to people, like, look, man, I'm kind of like the art of the soft sell. Like, it doesn't cost you anything to go over there and look at it and read through the preview. It ain't, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But I think if you read through it, it'll entice you, and that's why Amazon does it. Amazon is in the business of making money. They're not in the business to be charity case for starving artists. They are there to make money. So So they want to make it so it's as easy for you, the reader. The reader's the most important person, not us. So anyway, if you read that and you say, look, I think this is all right. I think I'd like to I think I'd like to just jump in right here. Bam, you can be reading it on your Kindle tonight, or you can get it in hardcover or even paperback, and you can earn points. Have you played around with this point system?
No, I haven't. I played around with it for my books. I do save them.
Yeah, I have found that the points they expire, and
Oh,
so
yes, they do. Yes,
yeah,
they do.
and I had accumulated points, and I'll tell you this right now. I'm on a starving artist budget. So basically, what I do is if I see books that are $1, and it's someone I like, I'll download it, and then in return, I'll give them a review. Uh,
Yeah.
and But over time, even doing that, I accumulated some points, and so I had like enough for a $3.99 book or something like that. And so I'm like, all right, I finally got points to buy something. So I got Casey Ashman, which is Kevin Ashman, who's Facebook friends with me, and he was the first author that I ever read on Kindle. Like I got my Kindle and then I went online. Okay, let me find something. And he, at that time, he was like us. He was an independent author, and he had several books out. And he had a whole series, a Roman series, and he had a medieval series. And it was inexpensive. So I downloaded, I think, the first of his Roman series, read every book in it, and then turned around and read every single book in his medieval. And he is, I consider, one of the 4 pillars of guiding me to become an author myself. And anyway, eventually, like after about 10 years, Kevin started being successful. And I mean, he was already successful, but he got picked up by a publisher. I think it's Canelo, who also has Stephen McKay, but I could be wrong. But he got picked up by a publisher. Well, now his books are like $5.99, and so so in long story short, I had points to burn off,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go back and read a Kevin Ashman book. So I'm reading one of his. He's got a series about Templars in the, I think it's the Third Crusade. Yeah, is it the Third Crusade? You probably don't know, but the Third Crusade, I think, is the one with Saladin. It's the one that everybody likes. Have you ever seen Kingdom of Heaven?
Oh, I know that movie. Yeah, I've seen the movie.
Great movie.
Yeah, I love that movie.
And it's interesting because, I'm a big historical fiction fan, and I have read several books now that take place during that period, but from different angles. Like I read Ben Kane, who is also one of my favorite authors and also a friend of mine on social medias, and he had one that was a Richard the Lionheart series, and so Ben Kane took his series there. Now this is Kevin Ashman there, and I think I've also read in his medieval series. It's called Medieval. That's the name of the series. I think it starts in the Crusades as well, and then they come back to Britain. And Kevin's Welsh, so it's very interesting because a lot of times his medieval series it's medieval, but it's more from a Welsh point of view, because usually it's usually Scots or the English or even the Irish, but having a Welsh author, they're kind of like the Jan Brady of Britain, right? Like everybody knows who the English are, who the Scots are, and the Irish, but not a lot of people talk about the Welsh, and the Welsh are very interesting. You know who's Welsh? Catherine Zeta-Jones is Welsh.
Really?
Yes. The Welsh are true Britons, and Britons, people think that like Scots and Irish and Brit have red hair and freckles. That's Germanic. Those are Anglo-Saxons who invaded and eventually populated Scotland and Ireland. Your real Britons that live in like pre-Anglo-Saxon invasion, that that now live like in Scotland, Ireland, and Wales are olive skinned and with black hair and green eyes and the freckled red hair people. Those are Germans.
Yeah.
Those are Germanic people. So yeah, who else is
My name is Welsh.
Your name is
Loyd is Welsh. It's Welsh for gray or gray haired.
Yes, because now yours is Americanized, so you only use one L.
That's right.
Yeah, Llewellyn.
Yeah,
Lou is also a Welsh name, and Christian Bale is also Welsh.
Okay.
So if you look at Christian Bale and you look at Catherine Zeta-Jones, first you can deduce that the Welsh are pretty people. They're pretty people, but that both of them are very ethnically Welsh. I'm trying to think if there's some other. I think Tony Curtis. You remember Tony Curtis, the actor?
Yeah.
There are Roman stuff. I think Tony Curtis and by that means Jamie Lee Curtis has got to have some Welsh in her. So interesting thing. So okay, so did we talk about the first book, Malinville? Is there anything you can tell us that's free of what do you call it?
Well, I mean, Malinville kind of gets you your foot in the door of this society, and the bad guys in the story, and there's always a bad guy.
Yeah,
is the company that originally created them called Bantam Inc. And I even it's not like creating stuff, and I even created a logo for Bantam. It's a big rooster and a little rooster.
But yeah,
because Bantam. Anyway, where was I going?
So it sounds a lot like The Secret of Nim.
It's got a little bit of that in there.
Yeah. Interesting. And if anybody doesn't know The Secret of Nim, I think it's originally a novel, but Loyd and I probably remember it from the animated movie, which is fabulous and hardly a kid's movie.
No.
About
they said, I remember we were in elementary school and we walked down the road, a busy road, to go to this movie theater, the movie theater that I saw Star Wars in.
Yeah.
And we watched The Secret of Nim, and it was a movie where what did he say? He said, damn. One of the rats said, damn.
Really?
We lost it.
Yeah, because it was very, I mean, it's a cartoon about animals, but it's kind of like Watership Down. It's very, very mature theme. And the premise is that these rats were experimented on. And because of that, they were made sentient. They have a society, and I think it's a kind of a little bit of a mystery because the main character is a field mouse, and her husband, she's a widow, and she's got children, which is kind of weird because I don't think mice and rats truly
right. And they needed to move the house.
Because
farmer was going to plow it up, and
And the farmer's a bad guy, but the NIM laboratory is also. I can't really remember, but I know it's a good. I need to sit Laura down because Laura missed out on a lot of good things. Do you know that she has never seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
Oh, she'll love that. Maybe.
Yeah, I brought it up because and you and I, we might have different opinions on things, and that's fine.
All right.
I saw the preview for the Timothy Chalamet version, and it looks god awful. It looks as bad as it can be. It looks like it's made by people who not only never read Roald Dahl, but never watched the 1971 Gene Wilder movie or 1970 Gene Wilder movie either.
Wonka is too happy.
Yes. Because, Roald Dahl, who's a great children's writer, famously hated children. And that story, Willy Wonka is a psychopath. He's he's a child murdering psychopath. It's that movie, and Laura and I, we never had kids, and we just kind of don't like kids, and it is a movie, the 1971. It's a great movie if you hate children, because it's it's all about. I think each of the children that. Okay, first of all, the outside world is dreary and dark and just a terrible place, full of depression and sadness and clouds. And then the boy is poor and he gets a golden ticket to go.
Right.
And he's part of this group that wins a contest to go tour the factory. And each of the kids, I believe, represents the 7 deadly sins. There's or some kind of excess. There's a gluttony, there's envy, there's pride, there's all. And the kids are horrible. They're terrible human beings. And every kid, except for Charlie, meets their end. Because they're doing something they shouldn't do. And it's kind of left vague. Like, did the kid die? And, Willy Wonka's like, I don't know, it's tragic. Oh no, stop. It's just, yeah. And he's like, absolutely does not care about all these children dying, potentially dying at his factory. And even Charlie gets in trouble because Charlie does something he's not supposed to do and damn near dies. And I won't ruin it for anybody, but yeah, that's the real
spoilers.
But they wanted. I think what they wanted to. This is why I'm gonna go off on a rant here. But you and I probably have different opinions. I hate Hollywood now. I can't stand the remakes. I can't stand. Please forgive me. I can't stand the wokeism and everything. I can't stand, like, if you're gonna remake it, there is no creativity. There's just money, so they can go buy something that was made, created, thought up from someone better than they are, hand it off to their writers, who are nothing more than people there because of nepotism and because of quotas of diversity quotas, and say, make a movie for me out of this. And I guarantee you that the people who wrote the new Willy Wonka movie never read it, never saw it, and don't care. And they were probably told, we want our own version of Harry Potter. So what we want you to do is take this title and create our version of Harry Potter.
That might be true. I don't know if I'm going to like it, but I will go see it.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, Gene Wilder will always be my Willy Wonka. Forever.
Even Johnny Depp. I didn't see the Johnny Depp version, and I never will. No one is Willy Wonka other than Gene Wilder.
It's all right. I mean, they made Wonka a victim.
See what I'm saying? That's they constantly do that. He's not a victim. He's a victimizer. That's what makes him such a great character.
Yeah.
Stop making them, victims. Not everybody's a victim. Not everybody's a victim. We can have bad people who are truly like, they're just that way. And it's not because they were mistreated as children
I firmly believe that real evil exists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some people are just born bad.
Yeah. Just imperfect people. And you don't have to, I mean, I think it's interesting to get in the side of a villain. Like, and I feel like some of my best work is when I had a really good villain, like Latham Woods in my trilogy, and Pierre. What is Pierre's name? I can't think of his name. But my villain in Mexico, My Love. I think that really, and I think it's good to give them reasons for why they are their way, but don't make it like an excuse. Just make it a reason. I guess that's the difference. Speaking of movies, I'm very interested in this phenomenon. Have you gone out? Have you participated in Barbenheimer?
I want to see it.
Okay. So you know what I mean when I say Barbenheimer.
Yeah, I want to see both of them.
Yeah.
They were going to have some sort of challenge on who was going to have the most sales over the weekend.
Yeah.
And the Barbie movie was going to overdo it 10 times over because they're
Barbie
showing
ran
more.
away with it. Barbie ran away with it.
Well, they're showing it in more theaters.
Yeah.
Every part of the family, even the dad,
Yeah.
or even the, whatever, is going to find something out of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I want to see it, but I want to see Oppenheimer more. But that's
Yeah,
just me.
I mean, given the choice, I don't think I'll ever watch Barbie. It's just not something I'm in. I might just for the cultural phenomenon of it, but Oppenheimer is first of all, I've heard this. Barbie has run away with it.
Oh yeah,
Barbie has run away with it. Mission Impossible has been absolutely buried, and what's really interesting is the movie that's now beating Mission Impossible. And forget about Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's done. That's dead. But is that Sound of Freedom movie? But I think this is so funny because we're living in a time where like politics have gotten into everything. It's come into what beer you drink, what movie you go see, and so I feel like the Sound of Freedom, the reason why it's doing so well is it's kind of like economic political activism where people are going to see it or even paying for other people to go see it because they want it to succeed and they want it to outdo films that they don't agree with, which I think is an interesting phenomenon itself. The interesting thing about Barbenheimer, and so when we say that, we're talking about Barbie, which is about the plastic toy from Mattel, and Oppenheimer, who was the man who invented the atomic bomb. And they couldn't be more different from each other in tone, genre, all this thing. But for some reason, first of all, they were smart. Both crews said, let's have a friendly competition. And somehow everybody caught on to this counter programming. Like it was interesting that they had these two really opposite style of audience coming to the theater at the same time. So a lot of people said, let's see it as a double feature. And I can't even imagine two films that are more different.
Yeah. I think it's actually pretty smart.
I think so too. And I will say this. I'm probably more interested in Oppenheimer than I am Barbie. But even for me, like Oppenheimer is not something I want to sit in a theater for 3 hours. I want to watch it on streaming where I can make a drink and we can stop it and use the bathroom and be like, wait a minute, what was that? I'll back it up. But that movie's 3 hours long and Barbie's 2 hours long. So imagine going to that and you're talking about, I would think about the time and I think most people watch Barbie first and then Oppenheimer. I think about halfway through Oppenheimer, you're just brain dead. You're done. It's just lights out. I mean, that's like a full day of work. But have you seen the trailer for Oppenheimer?
Yes. Various ones of them.
It looks interesting, but it doesn't look compelling. It doesn't look like, oh, I've got to see this. I've got to see this. It looks like something I can wait for. And
we all know the what happened,
right?
But the idea, see, this is what really pulls me in is the idea that they really didn't know what was going to happen when they flipped that switch.
Yeah.
And even Matt Damon's character's like, so you're saying that we could destroy the world. And there was an actual fear of that.
Yeah.
But they went and did it anyway. I love that concept.
Yeah.
And of course it happened, but that's something that I would think of and go, oh, I want to write that.
Yeah. And you got to think about it too, because I think there's a big moral question. Like, well, why would you even do it if you could destroy the whole world? Because you're like World War II is destroying the world. And we're desperate to finish this war. And this, I have a book. It's actually like a part 2, but it's a collection of oral history of World War II. And basically it's like each chapter is like a different story. And it's based off of an interview with a person that was actually there. And the final story comes from the interview. I mean, they take the interview and then they write the story from the interview, basically.
Right.
And the final story is from the perspective of the tail gunner of the Enola Gay, which is the one that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima or Nagasaki. I can't remember.
That was Hiroshima.
Yeah, because Hiroshima is the first one.
Right.
And what's really interesting is his perspective is very interesting because we're talking about World War II. We can't even imagine living through something like that, right?
Right.
And they have no concept of nuclear arms and atomic weapons. There's no concept. There's no morality because they don't even understand it. You've been fighting a war where thousands of your soldiers are dying. Democracy in the world is at threat. You got people as evil as the Nazis and I dare say the Japanese were even worse. And I mean, we're talking about true good. It's the last time we had a true good versus evil. And we've already done things like the firebombing of Dresden, which is so famously written about by Kurt Vonnegut in Slaughterhouse-Five, in which they firebombed it. I mean, people were melted into the pavement. And it wasn't nuclear, it wasn't atomic. They were conventional firebombs where we just completely wiped out an entire city and all the civilian corner, but by this time, the war is so desperate. We're at must win. It's not because you want my football team to win. I want democracy and freedom and not people not being put in, we didn't know about the Holocaust until shortly thereafter, but you know what I'm saying. And so when they first got the concept of this, it was like, well, what is this? And they're like, oh, it's just a super bomb. So instead of having to drop like a bunch of bombs, you can just drop one. Sounds great. Let's do it. Right? Because we have no idea, because this whole idea of like, oh, there's going to be fallout. No, it's just like, yeah, we send these bombing raids and we send hundreds of bombers over Tokyo and over Berlin and all that to drop bombs, and we lose crews and planes. This is just one. We just drop one bomb, does the whole thing. What's the difference? What's the difference between one big bomb and 100 planes dropping hundreds of bombs? And so that was the concept that they had of it. They weren't realizing what this was really going to be, and then they talked about like I think was it a flying fortress? The Enola Gay was a prop, like 4-prop plane bomber.
Yeah,
I think was it a B-4?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah,
I've seen it in close up. I've seen it. It's really not that big a plane.
Yeah, chrome covered. Yeah, and so it's got 4 props. It's not a jet. Right. And so what you have to do is once you drop that bomb, you got to get the fuck out of there, man. You're in danger. And so they decided that the way to get the maximum distance was, I think they had to be like 10,000 feet and then basically go into a dive, because diving would give you enough momentum on top of your props, because the props weren't strong enough to get you way fast enough. So you had to actually go into a dive to get as much distance. And they gave the tail gunner welding goggles so that he could witness the bomb going on.
Right. It's like a high-speed slide.
Yes.
In the air.
Yes. Yeah. It's a fascinating thing. So I would like to see it. I really thought it was an interesting thing, because why is that a draw to bring people to theater? And I truly believe that Barbie helped that movie, because I think a lot of people did the Barbenheimer thing, and a lot of people went and saw what would have been a sleeper of a movie, now got a better weekend than it would have, because the Barbie people because all these people, I know a couple that did it. They went and saw both movies.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we'll see what Barbie did. Now, Barbie's really interesting because apparently, have you heard anything about Barbie?
I heard that it's a lot deeper than it looks.
It's got a very like misandrist like men. It's a weird movie because it feels like they're not quite sure who it's for and what they're doing, because I've heard a lot of reviews, and I've heard a lot of people say they really liked it. I've heard people say that it's terrible. Um, it's a movie I've heard that both seems like it hates Barbie and is making fun of it, and literally says, without, I mean, it's very on the nose, the writing, like in the movie literally says Barbie is a a capitalist symbol of um, unrealistic beauty standards for women, and Barbie's a terrible thing. So it sometimes treats her as something to be revered and loved, and sometimes it treats her as something to be reviled. It looks like it's a movie you can take your kids to, but yet it's PG-13. Laura pointed it out. She goes, it does say PG-13, so if you're paying attention, but there's some lewd jokes in it.
Yeah.
That are not appropriate for kids. And I'm not a pearl clutcher. I'll just go ahead and say there's a joke in there in which the Ken dolls are all vapid and stupid and useless, and kind of like homoerotic bro guys.
Right.
And they're at the beach and they're about to have a fight, and they're saying, I'm going to beat you off. No, I'm going to beat you up. Hey, no one beaches him off until they beach me up. So they're basically, it's a play off the word beat up and beat off, but you're using the word beach. So it's a double entendre. So it sounds like it's going to be like a gay masturbation party. And it's kind of funny. Because trust me, I like crude humor.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny, but it's kind of weird in a Barbie movie that you might be bringing your 8-year-old daughter, and daughter's like, Mom, what do you mean by beaching each other off? What does that mean? How do you explain that to your kid?
Well, you can lie to them.
You can lie to them.
Which, a lot of parents in my generation did. And later on, when you're older and you see that kind of movie, and you're going, oh, that's what they were talking about. Holy shit.
And then it goes back and forth. Like, I mean, they literally it's Barbie fighting the patriarchy. I mean, they're literally using the term patriarchy and toxic masculinity. And I won't give away too much of the plot, but she lives in the Barbie world in which the women kind of rule and the men are accessories, which is how the toy is. Can only exist to be an accessory to Barbie. And that's how their world is. Well, when they go to the real world is this misogynistic hellhole, where like every woman's a victim and all the men are just either evil, dumb, or evil, weak, or incompetent. And it's really interesting because I wonder, like, why does Mattel sign off on this? So Mattel, which by the way, the board of directors of Mattel is like 6 women and 5 men. And the woman who invented Barbie was the CEO of Mattel for like from 1945 to like when she died. I can't remember when she died, like 40 years later. But they make Mattel to be this like evil patriarchal thing where like it's all men and they're trying to control Barbie because they're trying to control women. So I wonder, and I guess I have to see it myself. I don't know if it's a satire and parody making fun of like what they call fourth wave feminism. Like, original feminism is we all agree with this, right? Like equal women's rights, equal opportunity, all equal pay, all that kind of stuff. There seems to be like this new wave of it where it's just hateful. We want revenge against men. We want to bring men down. And the movie's a lot of that. So it's almost like, what is it really making? Is it making fun of the patriarchy, or is it making fun of like this radical version of feminism? And I'm not quite sure. There are some people that I listen to that they're like, oh, it's woke, it's terrible, and I have others that usually are like that. And like, no, not really, because first of all, it really is made for like not just girls, I've heard it's not really made for young girls. It's more made for adult women who played with Barbies that wanna. So I don't know. And I'm not being facetious. I guess I need to see it to see what the truth is, because I'm hearing different versions and different stories of what the. I mean, everybody agrees with what the main plot points of the movie, but what is it they're trying to do? By the
Yeah.
way, it's 4 o'clock. Do you need to go?
I can hang on for a few more minutes.
Okay, so let's get back to all this. I might watch Barbie just to see, because I do like to look at something with like
Yeah.
kind of a critical eye and say, oh, what are they really doing here?
Yeah. I'll be
but
seeing Oppenheimer first, though.
yeah, I mean, if I can only see one, it's Oppenheimer. I mean, the only
Yeah.
movie I'm going to actually, because I got social anxieties. I don't like seeing movies in theaters, much to Laura's chagrin. But the Napoleon, to me, Napoleonic Wars are like my Star Wars. And that movie with Joaquin Phoenix. If you haven't seen the trailer, watch it, because and as a Napoleon fan,
Oh, I want to see that. Yeah, I want to see that.
I recognize so many scenes just because I know his story very well, and like, oh, I know where that is, and I know what's happening there, and it's great. And I think Joaquin Phoenix is perfect for it, because the real Napoleon was an introvert. Real Napoleon was kind of socially awkward. He was a genius, but he was also a guy who wasn't really comfortable in his own. He was like a contrast, great confidence in himself, but yet kind of socially awkward too. And Joaquin Phoenix is that way himself.
No,
And
yeah.
it really works. The only thing is that his eyes don't work, because first of all, Napoleon was 5'6", and he was an Italian. He had dark eyes, and Joaquin Phoenix is icy blue. So anyway, we talked about Malinville, the first one. This is Malinville 2. Does it pick up like where we left off, or is it kind of like its own new episode?
It's like its own new episode. It takes place a few months after the first one.
Okay.
There's been some construction going on in Malinville,
Okay.
a new place, and where we leave Malinville, the first Malinville, where everybody's pretty happy and satisfied. Now there's been some turmoil going on amongst the ranks of what happened at the end of the first one. They've had time to think about it and are starting to regret it, feel guilty about it. So those things have to be addressed.
It sounds a lot like my second book, The Perils of Perryville, which, real quick advertisement, it's only 99 cents on Amazon until Tuesday. If you're watching this, shortly after it's recorded. But my idea when I wrote The Perils of Perryville, which is the sequel to Rampage on the River and the second book of my series, was, all right, we had book one. Book two was really about the characters dealing with the consequences of what they did in book one, which fueled that book. Was there any kind of goal or any kind of like anything you set out to do with the new book when you wrote it, or any kind of concepts you wanted to explore?
Well, yeah, this one, the first one it basically takes place, in the first one, you don't really know where Felix lives.
Mm-hmm.
That will be revealed at the end of Malinville 2,
Okay.
where all this takes place. It's just about them trying to live in peace and away from Bantam. This one takes them out of their comfort zone, and they have to travel.
Okay.
And it's the idea of traveling with 6-inch people. It seems like an easy concept, but when you're trying to keep them secret,
yeah,
it's there's difficult choices have to be made, and it's expensive choices. I'll say that.
That's an interesting concept, because you're right. Like, how do you, because 6 inches, that's tiny, but that's still big enough to be seen.
Yeah.
What a stir. Let me take a look. I'm interested in the length, because I've kind of gone through a little bit of decision making myself. So it looks like the print length is 291 pages, which I think is a great, like, Goldilocks of novel. How many words is it?
This one is just shy of 85,000.
Yeah, you nailed it. Okay. Because and we talked about this because I'm writing the Prussian Prince, and originally part one was going to take place in the Austro-Prussian War, and part two was the Franco-Prussian. And I just realized as I'm getting close to the end of part one that I really had two novels. And, I think we talked quite a bit about both artistically and business wise. Is it better to have a big epic book or having shorter books? And I think by most standards, I think 80,000, right around the 80 to 90,000 is, and you could even expand, you could go maybe 70 to 100,000 is just like where you want to be, right around anywhere between like 260 to 400 pages.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I just finished a book by Rob Steiner called the Muses of Roma, and it was a good book. But it was a long book. I think the print version is like 500 pages, 600 pages, and now I'm reading Kevin Ashman's book, and it's I don't know what the word count is, but I think it's a page count. I think it's about where yours is, and a lot of the Byrne Cornwell ones are too. They're around 300 pages, but I hate measuring things by pages because the way it's printed,
right?
Are there 200 words per pages? Are there 400 words per pages? But it's interesting reading it on the Kindle. I don't look at pages. I look at percentage a lot. And so I noticed that the percentage is going faster. And I think that readers, and by the way, when you need to go, you just say, I got to go. And that's how we'll do that. I think that for the reader, especially, there's less and less time for people to read. There is a time and place to sit down with a big 500-600 page novel. But I think a lot of times readers are reluctant to get started with something like that.
Yeah.
So I think giving them this is really satisfying. I think a novel should never be less than 50,000 words, and even that's cutting it short. But Rampage on the River was 56,000 words, and I've gotten complaints. No one ever complained it was too too short.
You have to serve the story.
Yes.
It just comes down to that. Yeah.
Blood for Blood was 119. Mexico, My Love was 124,000. Those needed to be that long. But one of the things I did want to do is kind of get back. And I might still write some epics. Like when I write Black James. Have you read, and it's okay if you haven't, have you read Mexico, My Love yet?
I have not gotten to it yet. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, that's fine. You don't have to ever read it. But Black James is.
You got my money.
Yeah, I got your money. You're right. Black James is a character that he is mentioned quite a bit in the trilogy, but then you meet him in the flesh in Mexico, My Love. I'm going to write a novel about him, and because it's going to be a standalone novel, I'm not planning on doing a series with him. It might need to be a very long book because what I want to do is start all the way from when his ancestor is captured in intertribal wars in Africa and sold into slavery, and then his one of his ancestor ends up running away and fighting in the War of 1812 on the side of the British and burns the White House down, to James growing up in Jamaica because after there were a lot of blacks that the British, both in the Revolutionary War and the War of 1812, the British said, hey, look, if you're a slave and you come to us, we're going to put you in the army. We're going to declare you free. You're going to be free for life. So a lot of guys took, and to be honest with you, I would have taken that deal too, and shot me some U.S. rebels or American rebels. And the royal, they were Royal Marines, and much of them were black, that were part of the group that burned the White House down during the War of 1812. So I thought it'd be really interesting to have either his father or his grandfather. But then after the war, the British relocated a lot of those ex-slaves to either Canada or Jamaica. So I wanted James's father to run a dock in Jamaica, and that's where James kind of gets his love for, he reads books about piracies, and he's got this fantasy and about being a pirate, and then he gets himself betrayed and sold into slavery, and that's what starts the adventure that eventually is going to make Black James this pirate. One of the things I meant to say this earlier when I got on the tangent about one of the things that you and I have in common is that we write not only emotionally, but we're nostalgic.
Oh,
and my books are for adults, but they're also for mature children. Like if you can read it, then you should be, no problem. And so when I was like 12 years old, I was reading adult novels, and
same way.
Yeah. And I am really writing the books that I wanted to read when I was like 12 to 16 years old, like high adventure, sword fights. And I feel like that's the same with you, because your story, the concept it really is. I find it very interesting, and about this fantasy of these little people living in the woods, and it's like a modern day, like a lot of the Germanic and Celtic fantasies about elves and fairies and gnomes and all that. It very much seems like a modern day fairy tale, and you're giving it like scientific reasons that they were created by Bantam to be assassins. That's great. It's like a modern day fairy tale.
Yeah, I like it. I like thinking of it that way. That's pretty cool.
Let me and write, even though it's for adults, it's like what I do is I write to the child inside of adults.
See, I'm writing for that kid that picked up Stephen King for the first time.
Yes.
When I was 10 years old.
Yes.
Christine was like one of the first adult books I ever picked up.
I never read that one. I read a lot of his. I didn't read Christine. I saw the movie.
I mean, I'd seen the movie, right?
Yeah.
And I loved the movie. And then I saw the book in a used bookstore for $5. I even had to borrow like an extra buck for tax from my dad so I could get it.
Yeah.
And that's when that started. So I was reading adult stuff when I was 10. So when people ask me like, can my kid read this? I'm like, well, it depends on what the parents like.
Yeah.
If it was me, I'd be like, yes, of course. But then,
my feeling about my books, like they're swearing, but it's only when like the bullets are flying, when it's realistic that it would be swearing.
Oh yeah.
There are sexual scenes, because you've read some of them. I know you've read Rampage.
Oh yeah.
And Perryville too, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So there's sexual but I feel like I do. But when those happen, it's like in the middle of the book. And my thing is like, if the kid's gotten that far, the kid can handle it.
Right.
Because it's not in the beginning of the book. And it's no worse than what I mean,
it's not graphic
to have I'm going to beat you off joke in it.
Right. Right.
And the reaction I've gotten from parents is I tell them that, and they're like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Like, because I feel like if the kid is mature enough to read the book and get that far, then the kid can handle it. I always say my book is on the same level as Catcher in the Rye as far as adult themes. Like there's Catcher in the Rye, there's some swearing. I don't know if you read it, but there's
I've read it
too. Yeah.
Absolutely hate it.
You hated it?
I Catcher in the Rye.
It was I felt it was kind of boring, and it was mostly about a whiny rich kid. The one thing I love though, I love the line that just kills me. I love that line he uses all the time. But I wasn't really that big of a fan of it.
Yeah,
I read it.
It reminds me of Jack Kerouac On the Road, where I found that interesting. Catcher in the Rye is I don't know.
I read it because I felt like, because I went through a phase where I wanted to read a lot of classics, because I didn't really do a whole lot. I dropped out of high school. So I didn't get, and then when I was in college, and And yeah, there's a way of doing that if you drop out of high school with GEDs and Army and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when I was in college, and I did do some literature classes, but most of my literature classes were in Spanish because I was a Spanish minor. So I knew a lot of Spanish and read a lot of short stories and even a novella in Spanish. But yeah, so I went back and I started reading a lot of classics, and I read that. Laura and I, a couple of years back, we both read The Outsiders.
Yeah.
And I remember the movie.
See Hinton.
Yeah, State Golden Pony Boy.
Right.
The book was really good. I mean, I think the book was. It's funny because a lot of the stuff that was considered adolescent now is like adult stuff. Like I don't see a lot of young kids reading The Outsiders.
No.
Great movie though. Great movie.
Oh yeah.
So what do you got? So you've just released your second novel,
right?
And what's happening now? What's happening with your writing business?
Well, next year, I'm going to release a book called Malcolm's Bridge, which the first draft is done.
Okay.
I'm waiting to finish the book that I'm writing now to go back and work through that again. What I'm working on now is Little Ronin, which is a Malinville story, but not part of the main Malinville story. Which I've been doing a lot of research on samurai. And speaking of which, that last video that we did, and we were talking about Shogun.
Yes.
I finally broke down and bought a brand new hardback edition of Shogun, and it's a brick.
Have you ever read it before?
I have not. I've seen parts of the miniseries.
Oh, you haven't even seen the whole miniseries?
No.
Because it used to come on once a year when I was a kid.
Yeah, I would see it on, and at that time it didn't interest me, but now it interests me a great deal. So when it gets cold, I'm going to sit down and try to get through this tome.
I think you will, because I read Shogun relatively young, and it is a big book. And then once again, it's one of that marketing thing, because you write a big book like that and it's great. It's cock measuring contest. Look how big the book. My book's bigger than yours, but people are reluctant to sit down and start a book like Shogun.
Yeah.
My recollection of it was that it was very readable. It was actually like it didn't feel long. It was a good book. It kept me in the story. And I really enjoyed it. And I had seen the miniseries several times. But like they always say, the book is always better. Now, I really liked it because I like I'm a little bit of a, what do you call it, Japophile.
I don't know what the correct term is, but
yeah, I'm not a weeb because I'm not into anime, but I grew up loving martial arts, loving samurai culture, all that kind of stuff. And also, I've always been, into historical stuff. So it's right up my alley. It's a great book. It's full of real history. And so it's something that me as a reader, I know that historical fiction, because that's basically what it is. It's a historical fiction. But that's based off of a real story, which all the good historical fiction is. So it being outside the genre that you normally like, I don't know how much you would like it, but I will tell you that there are books that are, that were a third the size that I labored through to finish to the end. This book, no problem. I loved every page, and I've been meaning to go back. I think I've started twice reading Taipei. Which
that's the second one, right?
That's the second one, and they're loosely like all the books are connected in that they take place in the same world. So everything that happened in Shogun had happened when the characters are in Taipei, but Taipei takes place like in the early 1800s, where Shogun is like right on 1600, right on 1600. So you're not gonna. So they mentioned Blackthorn, who I think is the English guy who becomes an advisor to the Shogun.
Okay.
But he's not in it, so it's like we said before, it's episodic. So that's great. You're a very prolific writer. I think your writing pace, you had quite a backlog of stuff to get
yeah.
Yeah,
and I've added since I've shown my last list. I'm not going to show the list anymore.
I don't mean to be, I try not to give you too much unsolicited advice, but I felt that was a mistake.
It's
People
really
stop taking you seriously if you're constantly saying, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you don't do it.
Right.
Just wait till it's done.
So far, I'm batting 1,000 when I say that I'm going to put something out, and then I usually put it out early. So, but the list is I'm keeping that to myself.
Yeah, and I just added a book. I came up with a great idea. I probably don't want to talk about it publicly, but it doesn't fit in my series. But it's just kind of, I have a list of books that I could pitch. Like, for example, so I listen to Rock Paper Swords. I don't know how much you listen to it, but I listen to it. If they have like a rock star on there, I'm not going to listen to it because I don't have time. But I like listening to when they talk inside baseball. And Steve McKay's story is pretty interesting. So, like us, he was an independent, and he started writing books and putting them up on Amazon, like we do. And when he is now writing a trilogy for, I think, Canelo, the same company that Kevin Ashman's with. And I think the story is, and I could be wrong, but I think what I heard him say was they came to him and they said, we'd like you to write a series for us, a trilogy. What do you got? And he said, well, I've thought about doing one about Alfred the Great. And they're like, excellent, we'll do that. And so I think they optioned him for like 3 books.
Wow.
And I'll tell you something else. By the way, he said the reason they found him, because they approached him, was that someone else who was writing for Canelo put out a book, and Steven read it and wrote a review for it. Like as soon as it came out, Canelo saw the review, saw that he was an author that was doing significantly well, especially for an independent, and said, would you that's how he got noticed, by writing a review. Now, I'm not doing that because, okay, I'll tell you this. I am on kind of my own program as I'm reading as many novels as I can and writing reviews and giving everybody 5 stars. If I don't like it, I just won't write a review. And so I either like it or I don't, because I know that helps the authors. And I'm doing it. I'm not asking for anybody to do it back. I'm not asking for any favors from anybody, but that's another reason to do it, is that if you're one of these publishers sees, oh, this guy wrote a really nice review of our book. Oh, he's an author too, maybe, but anyway, all that to say, I go way too far with my tangents, is that I have a list of my books that I want to write that's in this series called The Long Century. And then I have a secondary list of things that I could pitch if a agent or a publisher reaches out to me and said, we'd like to work with you. What are your ideas? And then I said, well, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this, I could do this. And just roughly, I would say I have ideas for like something that would take place around 1400 in Eastern Europe. But I have an interesting American Revolutionary War standalone that I came up with the other day. I'll tell you when we're in person.
Okay.
I don't know why I'm paranoid, but that's great, man. Congratulations on getting your book out.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you.
You show it again.
There it is. And if people, the link is in the description, so it doesn't hurt to just look at it. It doesn't pay a penny.
Window shop. You might go in.
Are you doing anything particular for marketing? Are you doing any advertising? Or I know you do book signings. Do you have any events coming up?
I've got 2 in the planning. I won't know until everything's official, and then I'll post all that stuff. I might be going to a book signing out of town. I'm still waiting to hear from that.
Okay.
And
Exciting.
then when I get caught up, I'm going to try and do the Amazon advertising and all that good stuff.
I started this one and I did the first day lesson and I just got so far behind. And I fell into this trap of, I got to a kind of a resting point in my narrative. And basically where I am, I would say I'm probably about 60% done with the current book. And the big marquee battle in it is the Battle of Königgrätz, which just kind of decides the Austro-Prussian War. And so I'm in the beginning stages of it. And I need to go back and do some research for the next little scene I'm going to do. And so then this week started and I got super busy Monday and Tuesday. And then Wednesday was the first day of the challenge. And it put me in a rut because I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do challenge stuff first. And then if I got more time in the day, I'll get some of the writing done. But I never find time to do the challenge. And so what happens is it's just compounding apathy because I'm not doing the challenge and then I'm not writing. So I decided today to give myself permission. And on top of that, I just got hired for a new job.
Hey,
thank you. It's not full-time. But it practically is. And apparently I'm going to be going to North Carolina for like 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
And I'm going to be on a road a lot. So, and I definitely wrote a lot of Mexico My Love in a hotel room. So, and in some ways it kind of focuses me because if I'm in a hotel room, I got nothing to do but drink or write. But yeah, I've decided to give myself permission to kind of give up on this time's challenge.
Yeah.
And basically are you running any ads right now?
No, not right now. No.
I am constantly running ads for Rampage, and because of the multiple challenges, I have like 60 ads for it. And even running I run all the ads for that, and I run all the ads. And Brian's thing is just advertise your first. If you're writing a series, just advertise the first book because you want people in, and then hopefully they'll read. You pay for that one click, and then they read all the books in the series. I like to do first and last, so I'm advertising for Rampage, I'm advertising for Mexico My Love, and anything that's on special. So Perryville is on special for 99 cents until Thursday or Tuesday, and then it's going to be 99 pence in England. So I'll run those ads just during that time. But I'll tell you, my U.S. ad, I usually am under $10 a month on that. I've been running meta ads. Those can be very expensive, but they can be very lucrative too. And in the beginning, I was, printing money. Every time I ran ads, I made a bunch of money. It seems now that when I run ads in the US, and I only do it when it's on 99 cents.
Yeah.
That I don't make the money back in sales from my ad spend. But I do in the UK. So if I run ads in the UK when it's 99 cents, people see that one book's 99 cents and they like, this looks good, and they buy the whole series. I don't know about you, but I get about 60% of my royalties from the UK.
Oh, wow.
But I think it's because they like historical fiction is more popular over there. And all the British authors are writing Romans, Vikings, and Knights. And so this is something that's different. It's an Civil War and Mexican War is exotic to them because there's like 1,000 writers out there, good writers that are writing Romans, Vikings, and Knights, including a lot of my favorites. So I do well there. And then I don't know about you, but my breakdown is roughly 1/3 of my income comes from KEMP, 1/3 comes from digital, and 1 comes from print. How about you? What's your breakdown?
I think my print is a little more.
Okay.
When you first publish a book, of course, you get that rise, and that's where I'm kind of writing that up a little bit.
Yeah.
And then people read my books for free with the Kindle Unlimited.
I mean, they don't read it for free; they read it for a monthly fee. But yeah,
correct. but it looks like it's for free to me. So but that's okay. That's okay. You know,
Yeah,
I've read a story. I've read a story that way, like for free, and go, I want to go buy that because I liked it. I
yeah.
like, I like, I like
But you're
having the
getting
real
paid.
thing.
You're getting paid per
Yeah,
page.
yeah.
I know you get more money if they buy the digital version. The thing is that I think I got this from Neil Gaiman. I can't remember how he says it. Um, he says one of the things he said. I can't say it as eloquently as he does, but he says something along the line is like people who read your book for
For
free
free. Yeah,
didn't not buy it because they read it for free. And they probably would never have bought it anyway, but
yeah,
they might come back and buy more. But I find that, I got good read through. So usually when people on KMP, if they read Rampage, they're going to read the whole series.
yeah.
And I make enough. It's the funny thing is this is the one place where a bigger book it does benefit you, because Mexico and Blood are both like around 120,000 words. So when someone reads through that, I make a lot more money and closer to what I would have gotten if they bought it than if they read through Blood for a Rampage on the River, which is only 56,000 words. So KEMP does work out better with a longer book, but one of the things that you hear Brian and his crew talk about is you got to write to market. You got to look at what the market does for your genre. So the things that are true for me, like for example, I get most of my royalties from the UK, may not be true for you because you write. What would you call your genre? What genres do you put your books in?
Well, I mean, fantasy, horror, and science fiction.
Yeah,
That's what I like to, live in.
yeah.
One book. I mean, Malinville isn't horror, and depending on your point of view, it's not really science fiction. It's more fantasy, even though it's based in reality to a sense. But those three.
Do you have the books or maybe it just takes some time, but on mine, it shows my whole series. I don't see your series. Do you have this when you set this up in KAMP? Did you set it up as book 2 as a sequel?
No,
Why not?
because I consider it separate. I mean, it's connected, but like I said, you don't have to read the first one to.
I
I may go back and do that.
I think that's a mistake. I think that's a big mistake, and I'll tell you
Okay.
why. I understand what you're. I understand. Sometimes I think you trip over your own dick because you're too much of a purist, and and you got to have, as David Gogren. If you haven't signed up for his free course, you should. He's really good. He's like, you have to have the cold dark heart of a businessman, and
Yeah.
and I'll give you a perfect example of this. Okay, so this is what it would look like if you made it a series, you made it part 2. Okay, now
Yeah.
this is part 2 of this, right? And yours are just episodic. They're not. It's an episodic series, not a serialized series. Okay, so I renamed my series. Okay, when Mexico My Love came out, it had an initial bump of all the people who already knew me who were going to buy my book as soon as it came out because they knew me, they were followers of me, they were friends and family, all that, and then nothing. Like literally zero for like 2 weeks. I was dying. I'm like, oh my God, no one's buying my new book. And it's the best book I've written yet. And so I did some hard soul, and I had it listed as part of the series, but as a sequel, but it wasn't showing it on the series page.
Huh.
Here you can look right here. It's yeah, please do this as a favor for me because it's going to help you. You're going to see books in the series, and you'll see now it was a sequel or prequel, but and it was tough because I'm a little bit of a purist like you, and I'm like, I didn't want to do it, but I was like, I got to do it. So I changed its even though it really is a prequel, I changed its designation from a prequel to book 4 because technically that's if you're going to read my series, this is how you should read it. You should read Rampage, Perils, Blood, and Mexico. It makes sense because there are, if you read Mexico first, which you can, it'll spoil some of the mysteries that take place in Rampage and Perils. And so the intention is to have you read it as the fourth book. So I just made it book 4. And guess what happened, dude? As soon as I did that, sales started happening.
Okay. Yeah, I'll change that. I've got to go, unfortunately.
Okay. If I check a week from now and you haven't done it, you're in big fucking trouble.
All right.
Okay? All right.
I will do it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, Loyd Elmore Jr., check out his book, and we'll talk to you soon, Loyd.
Have a good night.
You too, sir. Thank you for coming on.
Hey.
All right, everybody, that's Loyd. Now we can talk about me, my favorite subject. I won't keep you very much longer. In fact, I have an interview tonight with Books 101. And it's funny, last week we did a talk about Blood for Blood at Nashville, and it never got released because the file was corrupt. So we're going to redo that one. So that will be live probably tomorrow morning. I'm working this new job, so I won't be able to share it until I get home. But look for that. And as far as I'm concerned, I'm starting this new job. I am probably 60 to 70% done with the current book, the Prussian Prince. Actually, ever since I decided to make it into 2 books, and I don't know what the next one is going to be, I've gotten more excited about it, because before it felt like this huge book with a lot in it. Now I can make this book really ring true for what it is, and then start using that as a base to do something different and bigger for the book that's going to be about the Franco-Prussian War. It doesn't have a name. So that's basically it. I don't have any more news on that. I'm trying to think of something happened just recently. I played a dance as a fiddler, but this, and you might have seen those videos. So I'm going to let you go. I love you guys. Check out my books. Check out Loyd's books. And we'll talk to you soon. If you're an author, now I'm getting maybe 20 to 30 views on these. I'm trying to build it up. So please like and subscribe and all that kind of stuff. Leave a comment. If you're an author, I haven't reached out to other authors yet. Loyd is a friend, so he's willing to come on to talk to my tiny audience. But I love every single one of you, so thank you for being here. But I'm willing to, as this grows, if you want to come on and we can talk about your book, I'd love to have you. If I'm on and you're an author and you just see me on, send me a message. I might give you the link and have you come on. I want to do this once a week. I'm going to try not to make them all, an hour and 40 minutes. But so I'm looking for content. One of the things I want to do is not only advance my own career, but help others as well. So if you're an author and you'd like to, I'm rooting for you. So if you want to come talk about your book, come talk about your book. All right. Have a good time. Thank you very much. And I'll see you probably next week.